Welcome to the Speak and Get What You Want podcast, where you learn to communicate like the world's most successful leaders. Now, here are your hosts, TK Stratton and Chad Kirby. In a world that's becoming increasingly automated and a world that is becoming increasingly digital, there's one individual who's committed to helping people create those human connections that deepen and develop relationships that last a lifetime. We're here with the great Darin Adams on the Speak and Get What You Want podcast. Darin, great to be with you today.
It is always good to be with you, Mr. Chadwick. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's so fun. I've watched your career develop over the years, and you know what? Did you start as a weatherman? Is that where you started your first job out of college?
I was mostly just like a regular peon reporter. I eventually worked my way up to the prestigious role of weather reporter after that. So
Okay, nice. And then you went on to host, and many of you perhaps have seen Darin. He hosts a daytime talk show. And then Darin, you went on to start coaching entrepreneurs, which is interesting because you were working on the talk show with so many entrepreneurs that you then started going out and coaching entrepreneurs, traveling the world and still coaching these entrepreneurs. But today I want to focus a little bit more on what you're doing on Instagram with the one and only Game King. And I think it is phenomenal that you have focused on that as something that you're really doing and creating huge impact with that. And so why, Darin, what's the background on this? And for everyone, you have to follow him on Instagram, the one and only Game King. But tell us the background. How did this come to be?
yeah, by the way, there's no the in the one and only Game King. I am the one and only Game King, but the handle is just one and only Game. I don't want people to be searching all day long. I can't.
Okay, I love that. Love that.
So you want me to tell you how it all happened, how it came to be?
Yes. How did it happen?
So many years ago, when I was just hosting a daytime TV talk show kind of a thing, we decided we were going to do a segment on what are the best family games. It was getting close to Christmas time, and we said, okay, let's find the best games that people should be playing at Christmas that you can give it gifts. And so we rounded up a bunch and we did some recommendations, and it went off really well. And we said, let's next year, let's do it again. And so it continued happening each year, and finally I left the TV station, and then I said, I still like these games. I've gotten hooked on this. This is sort of like my addiction. I had always loved games even before then, and getting together with the family and building bonds and, family game time. And so I continued to do that on my own. And I would just, even though I didn't work for the TV station, I would just say, hey, I've done the research. Here are the best games this year. Here's what you should recommend. So I sort of fed them that. And then I had a neighbor down the street, and she was big in Instagram, and she was one of the toy testing sisters. And so I said, I do games, you do toys. You want me just to get you some information? She said, yeah. So I got her some information one Christmas. And then the next year she said, hey, we had to do this again. And she said, you know what? You just have to do this. You have to do this on your own. You have got to launch something. You've got all this great information. You've got to do it on your own. So that was literally a little more than a year ago. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And so I launched it. And now I research, I find fun games that people should be playing. I show them how to play them. I show them how to have a good time. And that's the story of how one and only Game King came to be.
That's a fantastic story. I love it. But I think, and I'm certainly not going to correct in the story. I'm not going to rewrite the story, but I want to share just a little bit of my experience, Darin. You and I worked together in a previous life, and you had the opportunity to actually be in my home. And when you came to my home, you brought with you games. Now, understand this. I've had many different business colleagues and business partners enter into my home, but you were the first one to come and say, okay, where are your kids? Let's gather your kids together. And you gathered them together. And at the time you brought games, but you also brought candy as rewards for the game. So my kids still referred to you as the Candy Man today. because you did that. But as I left,
But wait,
as you
can I interrupt? I know how strange that sounds, by the way. People are thinking, wait, what is it? Because, like, in retrospect, at the time, it seemed natural to me. But in looking back, I'm thinking, what was I doing? Showing up on strangers' houses and saying, I brought games. And I'll just let you know, as you might assume, as much as I love coming to your family and playing games, there were other places I did that. And sometimes I wouldn't even warn people ahead of time. I would just show up. I call it a porta party. I would come bringing some treats and some games. And I'd knock on the door. And my wife was mortified. We are not doing that again. We are not. I said, we're just going for a walk. She said, don't you bring the porta party because you'll want to stop at somebody's house. And I would just stop and like knock on their, hey, you guys want to play some games? And yeah, and people would play games. I understand it sounds weird, but it was just a way to, like you say, get in and have some fun and build some connections and have some good quality together time.
Okay, and I want to emphasize that point there, Darin, because I have had people come into my home, like I said, business leaders, different colleagues, and so forth, enter into my home, and they have left, and my children never ask about them again. But my children always, always, always ask about you, and I realized that, and I want to emphasize point you said there is because Darin, you were creating connection. You were creating. Now you said I brought games and so forth. Darin, the games are just the vehicle in which you have chosen to use to create connection. And one of the Instagram reels that you had a little while back that I really loved was you talked about a lot of people are going to be traveling this holiday season. Let's show you 4 games that you can use at the airport and travel with. And you brought out these games and showed these different games that people can utilize at the airport. But what you're really saying is when you're at the airport, and certainly not putting words in your mouth, but I'm going to for just a moment, is you're saying when you're at the airport, I'm not interested in everyone getting on their phone and being disconnected. Here are 4 ways for you to deepen the connection that you have with other people. And so I want to just ask you, Darin, has that always been something that you've really been driven towards? I mean, connecting and deepening the connection with other people. Is that
Um,
something you've always valued?
1 billion%. So back in the days of when I was on TV,
Mm,
what made a good story or a good newscast or something along it is somehow there's got to be some connection.
mm,
You're not just reporting facts on a story, but you're
right.
reporting how that impacts someone. Why is that important for someone? What is the connection that someone has with whatever story it is that you're doing? When I was even doing the daytime talk show host thing, it was it- how are we improving people's lives? And that's how this connection is made. How can we connect with them? And they're like, oh yes, I can relate to that. I can connect with that. When I was on stage being an entrepreneurial coach and speaking to large groups of people, if I wasn't connecting to them and somehow making them feel what I was wanting them to feel, then they weren't motivated to any kind of action. And that's exactly what I want to do with games now. And oftentimes that is a family unit or just some neighbors or some friends or people in your community, whatever. And you want to have connection is what you do. You don't. It's not about this. Oh, see, you're pushing buttons. You're getting me too riled up early here now, Chad. Like there are a lot of people in this gaming community, as I've discovered, who get into these games, and I have nothing against them. I just don't ever want to play games like Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering, and they go on for a really long time, and it's a different kind of connection. I want people to come in, bam, and have a connection and have fun and like be laughing, and that's to me what games do. They bring people together for a good time that you're laughing and you're engaging, and that's what the connection. I can't remember what I started on this, but anyway, that's where I ended up. Is that's what this is all about.
Well, and Darin, I love that you bring that up because, and I want to unpack that just a little bit further because when my wife watched you on TV, okay, and so Cassie was so engaged and loved watching you and thought that you were so connecting. I mean, just not to overuse a word, but you connected with the people in your viewership, the people that were watching, and I remember when you were looking to turn the page and start a new chapter. Cassie, I told her that you and I had crossed paths and that we were looking to hire you as a speaker. And my wife's like, "Oh my goodness!" Cassie's like, "The Darin Adams, the Darin Adams. You're talking to him. And I was like, yeah. She's like, he's incredible. He's fantastic. And she just rave and just say how great you were. And it was because here she was sitting in our living room, but you on TV created that connection to where she's like, he gets me. He understands, whatever it was that you were talking about connected to the people that were viewing your show. And I'm confident that there are people here, even many years later, who still come up to you and felt that connection. So how do you go about it, Darin? And I'm sure there was part of you that it did come natural for, but for somebody who's not as good and gifted at connecting, what do they do to develop that skill? Because Darin, that is a powerful skill.
This is a two-part answer. So I'm going to go back and answer something first, and then don't let me forget the question that you really specifically just asked me just there. I remember I was talking to my daughter, and she had a friend over. I think friend was home from college or whatever, and they were hanging out in the kitchen. And my daughter mentioned to the friend, they were talking. She knew I was a speaker, and I spoke by profession. And so this friend said, what is the most important thing? What is the most important thing to make someone a good speaker? What is, what should I do? And my daughter said, like, I know, Dad, I'm gonna tell her what it is. I said, really? What is it? And she said, it is telling stories. And I said, that is not the answer. The answer is making connections. And you
Mm.
tell stories to make those connections, but you don't tell the stories just for the purpose of telling stories. You tell the stories for the purpose of making the connection. It is, and see, that's and like I don't want to harp on this all day long, but maybe I do want to harp on this all day long. It is all about the connection. And that's okay. Now you mentioned about what you can do to improve that because
Well, wait. Before you go on, that mistake, people often ask me, they say, Chad, what's a mistake that speakers make? That is a huge mistake that you just touched on there. People that are sharing stories for the sake of sharing stories and not creating the connection, right? So then someone gets up and shares a story and they're like, oh my goodness, this is a phenomenal story. And they share the story, and maybe it was a good story, but it wasn't used for the purpose of creating the connection that you're talking about there. And that's just a powerful, powerful reminder. So excellent. Love that point. But go ahead, finish
okay,
your thought.
okay. So now one of the things now my kids give me a hard time because they say they think I'm kind of negative. They think I'm harshly critical. Um, like if we might be sitting somewhere and listening to someone speak, that could be in a church setting, could be in a conference setting, it could be someone just speaking, or whatever, in a school setting. Um, and I'll go through and I'll say, it wasn't that good. It was whatever. And they're like, it was totally fine. I'm like, no, it really wasn't. And often it comes down to, I say, they had a good story, but it didn't connect. Or they
Mm,
connected, but there was nothing to drive it to. So I think one of the skills, and I hate to say this, but you need to be an active listener and a critical listener.
mm,
So I have learned what I want to do better. Not just, this doesn't like come to me naturally, but I'll listen to someone, I'll say, what was good about that and what was bad about that? And I don't want to be dwelling on what's bad, but when I say what was bad, then I just like, oh, they didn't connect, or their story rambled, or they didn't have a story. So then that makes me think, how do I want to get better? When you sample, like if I'm making cooking and I some recipe or something, I sample it. My question is not what's good about this dish. My question is what's wrong with the dish so that I can correct it if I need to. So when you're
mm,
listening to a speaker, you need to be actively listening and be a critical listener to say, what is working here for me? What is connecting with me? And what is not connecting with me? Why is it not working? So that if I ever had to do this, what would I overcome? What would I make sure I did? And sometimes they're phenomenal speakers, and I just say they are doing A, B, and C phenomenally. I want to make sure I do A, B, and C exactly like they do. And so it can be critical in a good way or a bad way. What are they doing that works for you? And then what are they doing that doesn't work for you so you can make sure that you don't do that again? So, as much as I hate to people to be critical so that you can know how you can be better and build better connections moving forward.
okay, but how did you do that when you were on TV? Because that's the foundation of your career, was on television, where you're not getting that feedback immediately. How did you do that?
I think you have to watch. You have to watch yourself. You get feedback from people that you might a couple days later. You
Mm.
get feedback from people in the newsroom who might say, "Oh, that was really good," or "I really liked when you did X, Y, Z." And if they don't say anything, you're like, "Oh, I guess maybe that didn't work as well as I thought." The no response. So if you're not getting responses on things, that's a sign it might not be working as well as you think it's working. If you get overwhelming praise, that's great. But also, what if you speak and people say, "Oh, that was great because bum bum bum." Make sure the bum 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 ABC XYZ whatever. Make sure it's what you're wanting that to be good on. You don't
Mm.
want people to say, "Oh, that was so funny." "Oh, that I was on the edge of my seat." "Oh, that was whatever." If you're driving to action, I want to have people take some action. I'm speaking because I want them to make a change in their life or a change in their business or a change in their family or whatever. You want to make sure that that's what drives them. You don't want them just to say, "Oh, that was funny, that was entertaining, I enjoyed listening to you." You want them to say, "I feel motivated to make that change." And that's the whole reason we're speaking, because we want to make a connection to get somebody motivated to make a change.
Well, and that's so well put because if you're just trying to be entertaining or funny, you're not creating that connection and just really doesn't work. Plain and simple, it doesn't work. So let me ask you this. Well, as you think about creating connection and you and we had Brian Hatch on in a previous episode and he talked about the power of intentionality and being very intentional. You are very intentional about creating that connection. But I remember when you came over to my home and you would read the audience and you had like 4 games. And you brought like 4 games and you were reading the audience knowing, okay, it's time to switch games. It's time to switch games. And so is that something that you're just very purposeful with? You're just going, okay, I'm going to be super intentional about reading the audience. I'm going to be super intentional about making sure that we are making a connection and I know when to switch it at the right time.
Yeah. So speaking of games, like when I do porta parties, when I do games, when I do game nights and go to someone's house, I bring like a literally a crate full of games, never intending to play all those games, but just so that I can read the audience and say, "Oh, we need a short action packed game now," or, "Oh no, they're a little bit more sedate, we can sit down at a table and play something different." So you're always reading the audience. When I am speaking on stage, um, I try to get off the stage as much as possible so I can wander out in the audience and I can
Mm.
talk with people and I can sort of gauge them, and I can see their eyes. And if I'm getting a lot of if I have people watch me and I'm thinking, "Okay, good, they're connected." If they're on their phones, if they're doing something else, then I know, okay, I got to pivot or something. I got to change up something. So you've always got to be. Sometimes it's impossible to read an audience because sometimes you can't even see the audience. You're on a stage and you got big bright lights in front of you and you can't see anything. But as much as you can, do whatever you can. Get off the stage. If you're sitting at a table, if you're just connecting with your family or some friends, once again, you're not only intentionally listening like a critical listener, but you're an intentional observer. You're watching them while you're speaking so that you can then see, I am connecting or I'm not connecting, and here's what I need to do to be able to pivot.
Well, and when you're observing, isn't that just listening as well, but you're just listening to the nonverbal cues they're giving?
Yeah, right, exactly. If their eyes are looking at you, if they're smiling, if they're doing that kind of stuff, that's all that is. Yeah.
Okay, so here you've had this theme throughout your career of connecting, and you know the and I don't know how to say one and only game keying without saying the one I'm just,
It's
but it's
okay. It's okay. I'll let it go.
one and only game king um on Instagram. It's just phenomenal. But Darren, regardless of what you've
But
done
wait,
in
wait,
your
make sure I
career,
come back to talk about. Make sure I come back to talk about connecting as one and only game king. Okay, keep going.
okay, but regardless of what you've done in your career, you've always seemed to be very happy and finding joy in the journey. And is that come from your desire to connect? Where do you think that comes from? Because whether you are on TV, whether you're on stage teaching entrepreneurs, or now one and only Game King, what is it that it always seems like you're happy and enjoying the journey? Because we all know it's not always an easy journey. So is it your desire to connect? What is it that really has created that experience for you?
I don't know. I think though it stems from a desire to connect with people and then help improve their lives. And I
Mm,
know that if I am happier, if I'm projecting positively, they will also be able to be positive and be happier as well. I mean, I could walk around. My wife would tell you the exact opposite. She would probably tell you that I'm like, grumpy and don't ever say anything and whatever. But I think if you're trying to motivate people and you're trying to change people and you're trying to help people, you want to project what that could be like. You don't want to project not happy. You don't want to project depressed and stuck and whatever the negatives are, but you want to
right.
project positive. People want to feel good about
Mm,
whatever it is you're telling them. People want to feel good about the solution you're offering. People want to be excited about that. If I'm saying here's a software solution, I want people to be like, I can hardly wait. This sounds great. That sounds amazing. If I'm telling people, hey, I want you to play a game, they're like, this sounds so fun. I can hardly wait to do this. If I'm on TV saying, oh, you want to, here's a recipe you want to try, or here's some activity you want to play with your games, people want to say, oh, I can hardly, that looks so amazing. I want to do that. So if you want to make people make a change, you have to project the joy and happiness that comes from making that change.
wow, I love that. And we talk in the book as well as on this podcast that people match your energy in 3 minutes or less, and they feel that energy and that excitement and that positivity. And so, I mean, that's clear. It's been impactful for you as you really strive to have joy in your journey throughout wherever you're at. But let me ask you the question that you alluded to just a second ago, Darin, when you were talking about how you're connecting with others through the one and only Game King.
Yeah, when I first started One Only Game King, I had a slightly different vision in my mind. And you look at my first few videos, and they're not quite the same as some of the reels and videos that I make now. And I discovered people people it sort of goes back to people want to feel good. People want to
Mm.
feel happy. People want to feel that connection. A mutual friend of ours, Ray, was telling me, he saw one of my videos. He said, I just feel happy when I watch this. If I had to,
Yeah, whoa, you got to stop right there because for those Ramon Darling's his full name, and you talk about being a straight shooter, like he feels happy.
he's like, I feel, I can. Maybe he didn't feel, but maybe he just felt my happiness. No, I think he felt a
No,
little happiness. He's like,
no, yeah,
he was
stay
describing
with it. They own that. That's great.
the adjectives like marital bliss and couple goals and happiness, and so I was telling my wife, I said, honey, this is what people want to feel. This is what people want to experience. This is how they want to connect with us. So instead of us saying, hey, here's this game. And yes, I do happen to have games anywhere within arm's reach. Here's this game, and here's how you play it, and here's the pieces in it. Because I've watched videos like that. Like if I'm trying to Google how to play a game, and they're like, okay, here's what's in the box, here's the rules, all that kind of stuff. And I don't connect with that. And so I have to remind my wife, I'm like, hey, honey, when we're doing this, remember, we're having fun, we're having an excitement, we're just let it loose and let people connect with us and feel the joy that we're doing from this. And so the reels that have done the best, the videos I post on, I have three that are a million or more. One of them is like 8-9 million, and they're the ones where we are having the most fun, where
Mm,
we're experiencing. And it's not detailed semantics of now you have to make sure you play this card on this card, and then it's this person's
right.
turn. People aren't into that. People just want to feel. See, it keeps coming back. They want to feel excitement and connection, and have that goal of getting to where you are in that. And that's sort of what I try to capitalize a little bit in One and Only Game King.
Well, and something you also do, and I think it really is an extremely important point that's emphasized in your reels on Instagram, is there is a level of vulnerability. And what I mean by that is when they watch your reels, they are not overly scripted. Like that, like mistakes happen, and like someone will slam the wrong card down, and oh, you can't do that, and there's this level of vulnerability that I really believe also causes connection as well.
Because then people can relate to you. They know that
Mm,
it's not some perfect thing. They're like, oh, it's fine. It's fine to make a mistake. It's fine to not do the things. Because they're having fun, not doing it perfectly. I'll also be able to have fun not doing it perfectly. And it just sort of reinforces that life isn't perfect. Don't get hung up on the little details and the perfectionisms. We're just enjoying stuff. We're having excitement, we're having joy, we're having happiness, we're connecting, we're doing all that stuff.
Well, and I just want to go back to the point where not that Ramon Darling is not a happy person. I want to qualify that real quick. But when Ramon Darling, he's a very straight shoot. He's a straight shooter, and for those listening to the podcast, he's a wonderful individual. But he will not sugarcoat anything ever. I don't think he's done that since he was like probably 7 years old. And the fact that he said that he feels a connection of happiness. Now, he may not have said it exactly that way, but he felt the connection of happiness through the vehicle that you've chosen, as we mentioned, games, when he watches your reels is extremely telling. And it's awesome, Darin. It really is. And what you're doing is amazing. And I hope that everyone listening follows you on Instagram, because it's inspiring to me. Because Darin, I've never been a lover of games.
By the way, I know that. I've noticed that because when I come to your house, you're the last one to join in. If you even, your kids will join in, your wife will join in before you will join in, and that's okay. But you know,
Well, but no. The reason why is because I've never felt them to be very engaging. But I will say this: I've played games with you at my house. I've played games at your house, and I've participated in all of those experiences because there was a level of engagement, or rather a connection that I felt that made me want to be involved with it. And by the way, initially, I believe in both circumstances, at my house and your house, I didn't I didn't want to participate. But no, but I felt like I was missing the connection. I was missing the connection with my kids, with your family. I felt like I was missing it. And so I said, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that. So it wasn't the games that got me inspired. It was the result of the games. And that's creating that connection. And I really believe, Darin, with all my heart, that you go around and you're walking in your neighborhood with your porta potty party.
porta party. It's a portable party. It's a party
Okay.
on the go. Yeah.
You walk around your neighborhood looking to create and deepen connection with people in a world that is becoming increasingly digital, in a world where people are having less human interaction. You are committed to creating human connection. And that's and there are studies, Darin, where people show an absolute increase in happiness when they're having that human connection. And so the one and only Game King on Instagram shows you exactly how to do it. So, Darin, one last parting comment for those who may be a little resistant to engaging in games. What's the one piece of counsel that you would give them so that they can create greater connections with those people that they could if they participated?
Just remember, games are not for winning and losing. Games are simply for connecting. Like I used to be very competitive, and now I don't care at all if I win or lose a game. I'm happy to lose if someone else wins, if someone else has a better time. That don't and if you're not having if you're not having a good time and connecting, you are playing the wrong games. So that's what I'm here for. That's my goal
I
in life
love that.
is to
I
connect
love
people.
that.
Then you can have that. Like I could pull out like 8 dozen games, well, maybe not quite that many, but they're all designed to help people build connections. I don't care who's winning, who's losing. I hope I can explain the game in like 30 seconds or less so that we can get in and we can start doing it. If you are not connecting and laughing and having a good time and building memories, you are playing the wrong games, because that's what games and life in general is all about.
Oh, Darin Adams, always amazing to be with you. You are inspiring and just a tremendous individual. Thanks for being with us. Love spending this time with you. Have a tremendous day, everyone.